Hello everybody, I've been getting a lot of requests to do this type of video, and I figured I might as well just go ahead and do it because I got a commission for this figure, so I'm going to show you guys the full process of how I have customized Sunfire into Heatblast. So, first thing you're going to want to do, as soon as the figure gets out of the packaging, as soon as you have decontaminated it from all of the outside world, you want to give this figure a nice wash. In soap and water, just hot water, soap water, whatever, just to get off any excess oils and grease and all that stuff, because that can affect how the figure is able to be painted and all kinds of stuff. So I've already done that. I've already taken the liberty of doing that because you don't need to see me wash an action figure. And I've also gone ahead and taken the liberty of, let me take the head off real quick. When you get this figure, this piece right here, this flame effect, will be glued to his chest and to his back a little bit. It should peel up with minimal effort. I've gone ahead and taken that off. It should be glued like right here, right there, and I think just a tiny little spot right there. And maybe on the shoulders as well, which I've got a big glue spot on this one. You can see that right there. I'll have to take that off, but once you've gotten all this removed, or once you've gotten that removed, this will be probably your first accessory for the Heatblast figure, because what you're going to end up doing is taking off these bubbles with the black here, and then you'll just have a fire ring that you can set around his shoulders. So the first couple things we're going to do is get some 100% acetone. Fingernail polish remover a lot of the time works, but 100% acetone is what I use. And you're going to take off all of these black emblems and stripes and stuff. So what we're going to do, obviously, is remove the head and the accessory piece there, set those off to the side, grab your 100% pure acetone. You can get this at any CVS, Walmart, anywhere. It's just fingernail polish remover. And often it will be in the makeup aisle area. But this stuff is pretty strong, so make sure you have a well-ventilated area when you're doing this. I have a window open right now, so if you hear any background noise, that's probably why. I've got a fan that I will be turning on as soon as I go into time-lapse mode here. But what we're going to do is, or at least what I like to do, is take a little bit, pour it into the cap, which this stuff is going to evaporate quickly, so then what I do is just place something on top. And then I take Q-tip, dip that in that for a little bit, and this should, in theory, melt this paint right off. And you should be able to absorb it with the Q-tip. And you're probably going to go through maybe 10 or 12 Q-tips, maybe a couple more depending on how thorough you want to be. You go through this whole process, soaking the figure in acetone, well, not soaking it, but using the acetone to remove the paint from the figure, and then absorbing the paint into the Q-tip. And you'll actually see here he's got a little bit of a, I don't know if you can see that or not, he's got labeling on the inside of his torso. You'll be able to see. So you're going to do that over the entire figure, and I'm going to go ahead and do this and throw it into time-lapse mode, and I will come back to you when this has been finished. You'll want to be careful around the joints. Try not to get any paint into the joint itself if you can help it, because once it's in there you won't be able to get it out without disassembling the figure completely, and nobody likes to do that. So be extra careful around the joints, because it can very easily seep down in there. Okay, so I think you guys probably get the gist of what I'm doing by now. I don't think it's necessary that I go through the entire process 100%. I'm going to finish this off camera, and then we will get on to the next step. Okay, so now that your Sunfire is sufficiently nude, and taken all of the black paint off as much as you can, I'm going to have to sand this stuff off because I think there's glue in the way or something, and my camera won't focus. There it is. There's glue in the way in front of the paint, so if that ever happens with yours, just take some sandpaper. And that should come off pretty quickly, pretty easily. Or you can do the same thing with an X-Acto knife and just kind of peel it off that way. Of course, there's inevitably going to be areas that you can't quite reach. It's totally fine. You can cover those with Sculpt and paint, and it really should not make a difference. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to grab my heat gun, and we're going to pry this faceplate off. And I'm also going to grab my snippers here, and we're going to adjust this piece. So actually, let's go ahead and do this first. So you can use any cutting pliers for this, or you could use an X-Acto knife. I'm going to use the pliers because that's what I prefer. But what you're going to do is basically anywhere that there's this black paint, just going to go in, cut with just the corners. Don't worry about saving it because, well, unless you want to save it. I mean, if you want to save this piece, that black half ring or whatever, for any reason, that's perfectly fine. But I don't want to save it for any reason. So I'm just going to cut it. Twist that off. I'm actually going to shave a little bit of this off as well. That corner there, and I'm just going to chop. You can still see, well, maybe if it would focus again. So as you can see right here and right here, there's still two more of those little circles. You can cut those off if you want. I'm going to, or at least I'm going to cut one of them off because it will taper the shape a little bit more. So then all you have to do, if you really wanted to, you could embed a magnet in here and a magnet on the back of his neck, but I don't find it all that necessary. You can just loop it on there, and it's not really going to fly off or do anything. It's loose, it sits on top of there, but it's going to be pushed up slightly by the neck piece that we're going to sculpt, so it doesn't really matter. So now I'm going to grab my heat gun, and we're going to pry this face mask off. So I'm going to heat this up. You're going to want to take multiple passes at it because the face mask is a lot harder plastic. Didn't heat it up nearly enough. And then you want to get some sort of tool under there. Be very careful. You don't want to impale yourself. And start kind of prying it up best you can. It is, by my experience, glued in there very tightly, so you're going to have to take multiple passes at it, peeling it. And again, by my experience, this thing is usually not savable. At least the one that I did before, it got all tore up. So if you want to save this face piece, you're going to have to be extremely careful, but I'm not too concerned about it, so I got it a little too hot here. You can see that the plastic is very shiny. Try not to do it that way. I held it there just a little too long. Oof, man, that glue is very strong. Okay, so you'll see when you take the paint off, there will be this kind of red paint where the eyes are. I'm just going to take my X-Acto knife and I'm going to just cut those eyes straight off because they're not necessary for what I'm doing. Cut those off. Okay, so now you should have something that looks a little bit like this. And then all assembled, it will be, whoops, there we go. All assembled, it will look like this. So, a lot of you have asked me, how do I tint my hot glue to be yellow? Well, I'm going to show you. I have colored glue sticks. And I have my glue gun. So this is going to be a little bit wasteful of hot glue. But I think it's worth it in the long run. So, what you're going to need is one of these colored glue sticks, a regular translucent glue stick, and a paper plate or a napkin or something like that. I've got a napkin. So, what I'm going to do, first of all, is I've got a little bit of hot glue still stuck in this. I'm just going to go ahead and cut this. Pull that out of the back, just so I can use it later. Now, what I'm going to do is take just a little bit of this, maybe about that much, and I'm going to run it through my glue gun. So it's a little hard to load up, so what I'm going to end up doing, stick it to the end of this. You stick it on the end of your knife, you put a teeny bit of hot glue onto it like this, and then you very carefully run it through until it connects, and then you get your knife out of there, and then you just squeeze your hot glue out. And then, once you get to this point, load your next glue stick through, and then you're going to push this yellow, all the way through until that yellow is completely gone, and then what you're going to have is the yellow glue will stain the inside of the glue gun for a little bit, and you should be able to, in theory, run the rest of your next glue stick through and have it be tinted yellow. So now you can see the yellow is actually there. It's, like I said, this is a little bit wasteful, but the end result is pretty nice in my opinion. Alright, the yellow is almost gone. We're getting to the translucency there. So now what I'm going to do is pop this head off and just fill this cavity with glue. Smooth that over, fill this cavity as well. Smooth that over. Now use the end of my nozzle. This is how I sculpt with hot glue as well. Fill your cavity, you fill your space or whatever. You run over the tip of it, or you run over the glue with the tip of your gun. Let that cool a little bit, and you can add more as you go. This is not necessarily a foolproof method. The more glue that you put through the end of the nozzle, the longer the tint will last, the longer the stain will last. I didn't put a whole lot, so the stain is already basically gone. Another thing you want to do is, okay, so another thing, you can either cut the ears off. He does have actual ears sculpted in. It's much more noticeable on this side. I just filled it in. That way it looks more like just fire, straight up. Fill that one in. Smooth it over. It is not perfect. It's never going to be perfect. But it's not bad. Okay, now once this has cooled, you'll see that there is can get my camera to focus here. So you'll see that the surface of this is very rough, very bumpy, very textured. What I do to smooth this out, and it's not 100% foolproof again, but what I do is I grab my heat gun, I just run it over it a little bit. That will also help your glue get a little bit more clear. So then all you have to do is let that cool without touching it. Don't touch it. I'm so tempted to touch it because I want to see if it's cool, but then that'll leave a fingerprint. So don't touch it. And you'll be able to see now that this surface is much smoother, much cleaner. And that hole is filled in, and you get a decent flat profile. If you wanted to sand this down or make this a little bit more round, you could, but Heatblast has a pretty flat face anyway because of the lava rock or whatever. So otherwise you should be just about done. I'm going to blow on this to cool it down faster. I would say that this is the end of what I would call phase 1 for this figure. The next step is sculpting, and it's a long and tedious process, but we will get through it together, and hopefully my customer will be very happy with this Heatblast. Okay, so now that we have Heatblast to this point, I went ahead and grabbed my old Bandai figure, which I have all of the Bandai figures basically, for reference. If you don't have this figure, you can easily just pull up any reference on your computer or print out pictures or whatever. This guy's really on model though. In fact, a lot of the original Bandai figures are very, very on model. So these are great for using for sculpting reference, because that's what we're going to do next. We're going to start sculpting. My Dremel is charging right now, otherwise I'd do the feet thing first and cut out the little holes and cutouts in the feet. But you can do that at any time really, doesn't super matter. So I'm going to attempt to sculpt his face on camera. I don't know how well it'll go. I may have to pull it off of camera so I can hold it close and get in there with my X-Acto knife and stuff and really get it perfect, but we're going to attempt to do it on camera, and I'll throw it into time-lapse mode and we'll see what we can do about that. So, in case you were wondering, which I know many of you probably are and probably already commenting about it, what am I using to sculpt with? What do I use to actually sculpt with and stuff? I use epoxy sculpt for anything that doesn't need to be flexible, and for anything that does need to be flexible, I use green stuff and Procreate, which this is just little test pieces I have, but I don't use Procreate and green stuff very often because A, I'm still pretty new to using them, and B, it's expensive and I don't have a whole lot of it. So I had to do the rest of the sculpting off camera because it's just too difficult to sculpt through a viewfinder. So here's what I got though. He looks a little bit shocked right now. Actually, for some reason, I think his mouth is just slightly too far open, and it gives him that slightly like look. He's like gasping slightly. So I might go in and try to push this just with my finger inside. So let's see if I can actually do that right now. Push this a little bit closer. Push this a little further up, just in general. Close that mouth. When you're doing stuff like this, you gotta do it real slow and real carefully, because you want to maintain as much of the shape as possible. You're still gonna have to resculpt it. And I use, honestly, my favorite sculpting tool is a mechanical pencil. Don't know why. It just lets you get into those creases really nicely. A regular sharpened pencil would work just as well, but mechanical pencil seems to work best for me. Let's see, let's compare here. It's pretty close. The eyes are a little too circular. I think they need to be a little bit more round. Or a little bit, well, not round, less actually round, more ovular. Pull them down slightly. Looks kind of gaunt right now. Like, I don't know, there's something not quite right. I'm not sure what the difference is between that one and mine. Let's see. He's got a lot more, mine has a lot more nose, quote unquote, area. And mine's face is a little bit wider, maybe that's why. Let's compare with this one. Yeah, okay. I think what needs to happen is I need to add a little bit of extra sculpt on the ends here, and then push this nose outward slightly. And give him a little bit of a wider face, just ever so slightly. There's a lot of pushing and pulling when it comes to sculpting stuff like this. If you don't get it just right, your character's going to look off. Right now he looks like he's got very wide set eyes. So what I need to do is come in with extra sculpt on the sides here, and on his cheeks, and on his chin just a little bit, and widen the face so that his eyes don't look as wide set. Okay. So here's what we got. I widened the face out a little bit, and that's way up in the corner, and you guys are probably... Ugh, this video is going to be garbage. Anyway, so I widened the face out a little bit, and I think it looks much better than what we had before. Also much closer to my other sculpt, and much closer to actual Heatblast. His chin might actually need a little bit of work. Now that I'm looking at it, this is a little bit lopsided. I may have smushed it. Hopefully I didn't. Let's see if I can do that on camera real quick. This is a slow process. Sculpting is a very slow, very tedious process. So now, I'm going to not touch this head for the rest of the day until it's fully cured. Because, unfortunately, the only thing that's the weirdest thing with epoxy sculpts that I kind of don't like about it, I love it and I don't love it. It cures on its own, that's great. You have about, I don't know, 30 minutes of working time, depending on how quickly you work, I guess. and depending on your ratio, if something is slightly more or less than half. So there's a point in which this is sticky. Once it becomes not sticky, you can't really work with it all that much anymore. This is becoming to that point. It's still pretty sticky. So I might try to do a little bit more sculpting on this in the meantime, but I guess from here on out it's going to be progress updates, because I guess I'm going to have to do progress updates for the rest of the sculpting, because it's really hard to sculpt through my camera here. So I will do whatever I can in terms of sculpting on camera, but I feel like a lot of it is going to have to be off camera due to just like how difficult it is to pull off some of the angles, and you know, just sculpting in general is not super easy to do on camera, and I think most artists would attest to that, especially because I don't have the most ideal setup right now. So yeah, I will cut back to you when I have some more sculpting done. Okay, so as you can see, I moved during the making of this video, so I'm finally able to give you guys a real true progress update here. And I've done the majority of the sculpting, and I only have to do this leg left. But I wanted to go over how to do the feet, so we will go ahead and do that real quick. It's a pretty simple process. All you're going to do is Dremel a hole through the foot and then cut out the toe section there, and it'll just take a second. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get my Dremel, and I'm just going to make a circular cut right in the center of the foot. A little bit bigger. So now he's got a hole through his foot, like so. Then I'm just going to go ahead and make a cut down the center here, slightly to one side, and then you cut out a chunk in the center we go. There is Heatblast's toes. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with this other foot, and then we will get back into sculpting, and I will come back to you when all of the sculpting has been done, and then this guy is ready for paint. One last thing, if you want, you can leave the toes like this. Heatblast toes are a little bit rounder than that, so I think I'm actually going to cut off just a little bit more on the end of both foot, just to make it look a teeny bit rounder on the end. And this is an optional step if you don't want to do it. Totally don't have to. But I'm going to sand these down now, and they'll look just a little bit rounder and give that slightly more cartoony look to the figure. Okay, so as you can see, the sculpting is basically done on Heatblast here. The only thing I have to do is some more sanding, and then this guy will be ready for paint. So I will go ahead and do the sanding off camera because that's boring, nobody wants to see that, and then I will get to the painting. So I didn't do any video for this because I kind of wanted this feature to be a surprise, but I did 3 different versions of the Omnitrix for this guy, and those attach via magnets, one in the chest and one in each of the Omnitrix. And so I did a white, green, and red version so that you can have a bunch of different versions of Heatblast, you know, at different times, or if he's an alien force or whatever. So that I enjoyed, and then you can also just take it off and have either a Kevin 11 as Heatblast or just a regular Pyronite alien if you wanted to have that. After that, I sealed him with some testers, clear matte sealer, just went a couple coats on him, and packaged him up into my own custom packaging and sent him out. And the customer was super happy with it. He was actually so happy with it, in fact, that he did a review of the figure, which I'm super pleased with, and I was super hyped. A little bit of my fantasy, my dreams came to reality when he did that. So that was awesome. I'll put a link to that review in the card up above if you want to click on that and watch that review, see what somebody else thinks about this figure. And then he also mentioned me on, and I'm going to shout out their podcast, the Alternate Heads podcast. I think they're about 30 or so episodes in right now, and he shouted me out on that, so I'm going to return the favor and put a link in the description if you guys want to watch that. It's a great show. These guys deserve some more love, so please go send them some love. Otherwise, go check out my Instagram. If you're coming from YouTube, go to my Instagram and see the streams on how I made this guy, in real time.
And there's lots of other good content and good customs on there. I've been posting my customs there for a decent while now, so there's plenty of good content if you haven't seen it yet. It's Action Jack Customs on Instagram. Again, the link will be in the description. There's some underscores and stuff in there, but yeah. Otherwise, I'm super thrilled with how this turned out. So, peace.